Here's the truth about where I think the real estate media industry is headed in the next 5 years. I'm at an Airbnb shooting some content, and I was just thinking, like, what's the most common question I get asked? And it's really around where's the market headed when it comes to the real estate market in general, saturation, and how many real estate photographers there are. And then last, and probably to me is kind of like the most concerning, is artificial intelligence, AI, and how it's going to impact real estate photography. Because if you don't take advantage of it, I think there's a lot of pain coming. And if you do, I think you could really make a lot of money with it. And that's what I plan to do. So just jumping into it with number one, the real estate market in general and what we've seen with that. So I've been a real estate photographer for over 10 years now. And that doesn't mean that I've seen the ups and downs, because the real estate market has just generally kind of been on an uptrend, but there have been some times where things have gotten interesting. Last couple of years, we obviously had some stuff where we had to stay indoors and real estate changed a little bit. And before that, we've had some crazier years and some slower years. And so here's what I've noticed. It really doesn't matter for real estate photographers. For real estate agents, you want a good market. For real estate photographers, we get paid when a house lists for sale. So it doesn't matter how long it sits on the market, and it doesn't even matter if it sells. But here's the change that I have noticed. When it's a faster paced market, there's a lot of homes selling, what you'll notice is you'll get more listings, but your average order value, or get more shoots rather, but your average order value is lower. And so if houses are already selling themselves, right, agents are like, oh, I don't need to put as much marketing into it. So they get the basics, but they get a lot more listings. And so that makes you have less AOV, but more listings. The opposite is kind of true as well. When the market slows down, sure, maybe there's not as many listings if we're talking about slow in that way, but the listings are harder to sell a lot of the time. And so agents have to put more active effort into marketing them. Also, look at this. It's a cool place. It's on the Intracoastal in Fort Lauderdale. Anyway, agents have to put more effort into marketing them, and that means they order more media from you. So while there may be less listings, you get paid more per shoot. But the biggest thing is, none of that really matters, especially when you're doing less than $50,000 a month, because there's so many agents in every area that it's like, just go find more agents. The market is not what's going to hold you back. It feels like it will. I used to worry about that so much when I started. I actually asked one of my first clients, my very first client actually, and I was driving with her to a ranch listing, and she had like a truck for that purpose. So I rode with her, and I just asked her, like, she was selling real estate in '08, and I was like, what happened in '08? And she said, I had my best year ever. And I was like, what the heck? And she said, what happened was a lot of the agents that were like part-time, not really like professional, doing this for a living agents, they didn't get any listings. So they like left real estate completely. And that meant all the listings that were there, while it was a lower number and they were harder to sell, like a vast majority of them went to the top producers like Ann. So I just thought that was interesting perspective. So let's move on to market saturation. The thing that's interesting about real estate media is the industry has grown every year. What I mean by that is when I first started, less than half of the agents in the market I was in used professional photos, and now it's more like 75 or 80%. So over the last 10 years, a lot more agents have switched to using a professional photographer, which means there's more photographers needed, right? Like the market demand has grown, and it's only going to continue to grow. So that's one side of things to think about, is like there's just more agents that are interested in photos. The other thing that's really driven a lot of growth for real estate media, and why I think like the industry has literally gotten better every year I've been in it. When I first started, it was just photos. Occasionally someone would order a video, but now there's way more stuff we can sell. So photos, obviously. Video, much more common, but now it's like horizontal video like this. We also do vertical video for social media, floor plans, Matterport 3D tours, drone photos. You couldn't use a drone legally without some like complex licensing when I first started. So there's way more product we can sell them, which means the market is also growing for that. So there's more agents hiring us, and they're paying us more per listing than they were when I first started. That's a huge win. I would much rather do less listings and make more per listing. So that's super cool. And that's the other thing to consider. And the last thing with saturation is that's really fear of competition. And competition scares you until you're competing. And then you realize that's actually not what's holding you back. Like there's a few real estate photographers in every market, even the smallest ones. In big markets like where my business is, there's literally hundreds of real estate photographers. But there's also thousands and thousands of agents. And so what I always tell people is you really have to not worry about your competition. Not only are there photographers retiring every day, there are photographers that are terrible to work with and have awful customer service. There are different agent preferences. Even if that wasn't the case, there's still so many agents in every market that you just have to, find your bunch. I've yet to see someone with 100 clients that makes less than 100 grand a year in revenue in their real estate media business. Usually it's more like 150. That's interesting, right? So your job is just to go find your 100 and not even worry about the competition. I used to worry about the competition so much when I was first starting. It was like my biggest fear. And there's a company in DFW that's kind of like Norman and Young, my company. And when it was just me and Aaron shooting, it was just their two founders. And I worried about them. I studied their website. I was like, their branding was so good. Their website was way better than mine, right? And we hired a photographer, and they hired a photographer, and I was still super worried. And they hired another, and we hired another, and we're both growing. And you maybe see where I'm going with this. But anyway, I remember one day they posted, it was like in November. They posted, hey, big announcement coming January 1st. It ruined my December. I was like, what are these guys doing? Like, is this going to hurt my business? It's December already, so it was a little bit slower season. And I was like, And the worst thing happened, right? On January 1st, they announced that they were dropping their prices to $95 per shoot for a basic package. And I was at like $170. I was like, my business is done, right? And the interesting thing that happened is nothing happened. I kept my clients. I don't think they gained many clients out of it. There's a lesson in that. Pricing is not only what real estate agents care about. It's like a small part of it. But man, I had so much fear around that. A couple months later, they realized that wasn't sustainable and they raised their prices back. But the interesting thing is it didn't affect my business, and I continued to be scared about them, right? When they had 5 photographers, we had 5 photographers. Now looking back, I'm like, Eli, you idiot. Like, they literally grew and you grew and nobody took it, like it didn't hurt each of us. We were still growing and we were scared the whole time. And I look back, I'm like, man, Eli shooting by himself was scared of these people. Little did we know we were both going to build big companies, and there's still dozens of other real estate photographers in that area. Some have teams, probably more than 100 in DFW. And so I know I kind of went off on this one, but it's such a mistake that people focus so much on competition. I always say that the competition, the way it really hurts you is by scaring you into not taking action. So if you think about it, if you get scared of competition, you don't take action and start your real estate media business or grow it to the next level, that was actually what it looks like when your competition hurts you, right? They literally hurt you without doing anything. They cause you to be fearful, so you didn't take action. And so think about that. I understand the fear feels very real, but it's really only a fear for people that are just starting. The established real estate media companies are like, competition doesn't matter. The only competition is in your head with yourself. And so keep that in mind. All right, the third one, potentially the biggest of them all, is AI and how that's going to impact. So no one has a crystal ball. And like everything I said, it's been my experience, right? Who knows what the future holds? It's part of the quote unquote risk of taking a business, but you also have that risk in any job you do. You just don't have the upside of owning your business. And so here are my thoughts. Regardless of how AI affects the industry, this video is going to be here, and I'm very certain that I'm going to be very close to spot on with this. So here's what I've noticed. I got to give a little backstory on this. Technology has, compared to when I first started, it's gotten much, much easier to use. So it's easier to make videos. We shoot a lot of stuff on our iPhone at Norman and Young. Crazy, but we do it. It looks great. Cameras have gotten simpler to use. Editing apps have gotten simpler to use. Floor plans, for example, you literally make those on your iPhone, and the company that we use markets to agents, and agents still pay us to do it, even though it's just with your iPhone, no editing. And so what I've noticed is despite technology getting easier to use, more and more agents are deciding to outsource it. Why is that? Well, it's because they have something they need to focus on. They need to focus on getting more clients, making deals, selling listings. Even though they could do it, they don't have time to do it, and they don't have desire to do it. So keep that in mind here with the AI discussion. It's kind of like, as you grow and as your business gets bigger, as you start to make more money, you probably don't clean your own house anymore. You probably don't cut your own lawn. You start to outsource things, right? As your business grows, and that's what agents do too. They outsource stuff, and they outsource the photography. So despite it getting easier to use, and agents could easily do this themselves, they still pay us to do it. That's what I think it's going to be like with AI. The ease of use made it better for me as a real estate media company, right? So here's what I see with AI. Photo editing. I think AI photo editing in the next 12 to 24 months is going to be what most real estate photographers do. And that is an amazing win for us as an industry because it's a big cost of our business, right? We pay, let's call it 70 cents on average per image to edit. So a company that's doing $25,000 a month is probably paying a few $1,000s a month for editing. I think that few $1,000s a month is going to go to a few $100s a month, and all of that difference is going to be profit in the real estate media business owner's pocket. Now the fear is people go, agents are going to do it themselves. Well, that's not been the trend so far, and I don't see that happening. It just is not how it's been the opposite. So we want to look at history, right, and what's happened, because that's usually what continues to happen. The trends continue to happen. So that's pretty interesting. I think some form of AI video editing, a little bit more delayed, probably 36 months, we'll have like really good AI video editing. I could be wrong on the timeline, it's just my thoughts. That's another cost center, drives that down. That's super good for us. I think there's also gonna be some new technology around like how we view photos and stuff that's gonna make media online even more important. So part of the transition in the real estate industry over the last decade is that and I should have talked about this in the like saturation market side of things, but the vast majority of the shopping for houses is done online, and it's done online viewing media that we create as real estate media providers. And so that's a good thing because there's not good infrastructure yet around like viewing the houses. And I think there's gonna be some cool things that like use photos to provide a more immersive experience. But I think the biggest short-term thing is just the lack of editing costs. And a lot of operations things that we do are gonna get easier. So I mentioned one, photo editing, order forms. So we use Spiro to manage our real estate media business, so great software. And AI order forms are going to be a part of that, I think, in the near future, where basically it's going to suggest to a client based upon the house in real time what it thinks would be good. Probably going to be even able to do some scheduling around best light automatically, so it's not a pain point. And that's going to result in higher average order value and better photos. So stuff like that. And so I'm very optimistic about what it's always been with new technology is it always makes it better for the people who own businesses. If you have a job, it's a little more risky because like if you're a graphic designer, honestly, little worried about that 3 years from now, right? I think there's going to be, if you're smart and you own a graphic design business, maybe you can take advantage of that and make more money. That's always how it is. That's just how the world works. If you are in a position to own a business, you usually are benefited by the technology. Whereas if you work for a business, you have a risk of being replaced by it. And so those are my thoughts on the industry. My businesses are all built in this industry and I continue to push things because I think we have so much potential in this industry. So especially if you're sitting on the sidelines going, hey, I don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now. Number one, nobody knows what's going to happen, but likely less than you think. This industry is for certain still going to be here. May look a little different, but I think it's going to look a little different in a way that's really good for us as real estate media business owners. So don't let fear stop you from taking action because the thing you should really fear is not doing anything and just staying where you are now. You can always go back to this point. So whether you're right now a solo operator and you're worried about the future and you don't want to hire and scale, hire and scale. Every time I've grown my business, it's gotten easier. I've made more money. Sure, there's new challenges, but if you already have an existing business, push it to the next level. And if you're sitting on the sideline, you got to do something at some point, right? There's always going to be a reason not to do something. And that literally is just fear with a mask on looking like logic. It's not actually logic, right? It's just your brain trying to hold you back. And it will do that at every stage. And so it's a good idea to learn to conquer that now. Take that next step with whatever business you want to start, right? Take that next step. And then the next thing that scares you is probably the next thing you're supposed to do. It's always the thing you're scared of that grows, takes you to the next level. So those are my thoughts on the industry. See you in the next video.